In Sparta, a boy left his family at the age of 7, not for school, but for war. This was the beginning of the Agōgē, the brutal military training system that forged Sparta's warriors. At 20, he became an Eiren, responsible for training others. At 30, he was finally considered a full citizen and a true soldier of the Spartan state. And only at 60, if he survived glory and blood, he could join the Gerousia, the council of elders who advised kings in times of war. This wasn't just an army. Sparta was a machine built for battle. And in this video, we break down its unique military ranks and command system, from the youngest trainees to the dual kings themselves. In the Spartan hierarchy, the Eiren marked the beginning of true leadership. At 20 years old, after enduring over a decade of the brutal Agōgē training, a Spartan male earned the title of Eiren. This wasn't a ceremonial role. It was functional, demanding, and relentless. The Eiren was tasked with overseeing and disciplining the younger boys, often 12 to 17 years old, who were still immersed in the state's militarized education system. He enforced harsh discipline, coordinated endurance drills, taught pain tolerance, and oversaw stealth missions. His presence alone was meant to command respect and instill fear. His authority came not from age or lineage, but from sheer resilience and psychological dominance. Outside the training grounds, Eirens represented the ideal Spartan youth, controlled, muscular, silent, and fiercely obedient to the state. They were allowed to speak selectively and expected to lead without raising their voice. In wartime, they served as messengers or aides to commanding officers, observing battlefield strategy while remaining close to the ranks they once trained with. In every way, the Eiren was a mirror of what Sparta demanded from its warriors: unwavering control, loyalty to law, and unspoken dominance. If you could not command boys through terror and discipline, you had no place commanding men in war. The Hippeis were not ordinary warriors. They were Sparta's finest, selected at the age of 30, only after years of brutal training and battlefield experience. These 300 men were chosen by merit, loyalty, and political reliability. Their position was not just honorable, it was sacred. Unlike the common phalanx troops, the Hippeis trained apart, slept apart, and marched ahead of the rest of the army. They represented both shield and sword, a mobile, decisive strike force ready to protect the king or die beside him. These warriors wore the finest bronze armor, muscle cuirasses, crimson cloaks, Corinthian helmets, and carried Ephors short swords and hoplon shields engraved with the lambda of Laconia. In battle, they were the first to charge and the last to retreat. The Battle of Thermopylae immortalized them, but their legacy wasn't built on legend alone. It was built on discipline, silence, sacrifice, and unwavering unity. To be a Hippeis was to embody the very soul of Sparta, loyal unto death and fearless before the gods. In the Spartan army, discipline wasn't a suggestion, it was law, and enforcing that law on the battlefield began with one man, the Enomotarch. He commanded the smallest tactical unit in the phalanx, the Enomotia, a tightly organized group of 36 warriors who trained, marched, and fought side by side. To lead this unit wasn't a matter of birth or politics. It was earned through excellence, endurance, and unshakable loyalty to the state. The Enomotarch's role was critical. One crack in the phalanx, one man out of place, could shatter the entire formation. So the Enomotarch stood in the front line, shoulder to shoulder with his men. He didn't command from behind. He bled where they bled, and held the line when others might break. His orders had to be precise, fast, and unwavering. Whether advancing across rocky hills or holding a defensive choke point, the Enomotarch ensured the Enomotia moved as a single organism, a living wall of bronze, shields, and steel. Above him stood the Lochagos, the company commander. But below him, he was everything. To the men he led, he was more than a superior. He was their example. He embodied the Spartan code. Never retreat, never surrender, never disrupt the line. In the grand hierarchy of Sparta, the Enomotarch might not wear the richest cloak or carry royal blood. But when the horns of war sounded, he was the first to charge, and the last to fall. He was not just a leader. He was the iron hinge that kept the shield wall unbroken. And in Sparta, that meant everything. In the Spartan military structure, the Penteconter stood at a critical middle tier, not at the front lines like the Enomotarch, nor at the top like the Lochagos. But make no mistake, without him, Spartan precision would collapse. A Penteconter commanded several Enomotiae, roughly 72 soldiers, and was responsible for their unity in movement, discipline in formation, and flawless coordination in the chaos of war. His role was not just to bark orders, but to synchronize motion, turning fragmented squads into one living machine. Battle in ancient Greece was not fluid, it was rigid, structured, and brutal. A single misstep by a unit could open a deadly gap in the phalanx. The Penteconter ensured that wouldn't happen. He read the terrain like a map, felt the rhythm of battle like a drumbeat, and translated higher strategy into real-time action. He was a translator of war, converting the Lochagos' vision into field execution. His orders had to be clear, immediate, and absolute. There was no time for hesitation. A Penteconter had to command the trust of both the men under him and the leaders above. Many future Lochagoi were once Penteconters. This rank was a test of leadership, nerve, and tactical thinking under fire. It demanded more than strength. It demanded vision. In Sparta, where honor was earned through action, the Penteconter was the silent force that held the line, shaped the outcome, and prepared for greater command. In the Spartan army, the Lochagos stood as the heart of leadership on the battlefield. He commanded a Lochos, a tactical unit of around 144 elite warriors, and bore responsibility not just for tactics, but for every beat of their daily existence. From training routines and meal distribution to the morale of the men and their mental discipline, the Lochagos was both commander and caretaker. But the true weight of this rank was felt in the phalanx. Unlike modern officers who lead from behind, the Lochagos marched at the very front, shield locked, spear poised, breath steady. One misstep could shatter the line. One moment of fear could unravel discipline. That's why Spartans followed not a title, but a man, one whose courage had been proven, whose voice could cut through the roar of combat, and whose eyes had stared death in the face more than once. He gave no flowery speeches. His orders were clear, his presence unshakable. To command Spartans, you had to embody Spartanhood. Lochagoi were often the backbone of Spartan success, and for those who excelled, who could guide men through blood, fire, and steel, a higher honor awaited, the title of Polemarch, general of a Spartan wing. But that promotion was not given. It was earned through the brutal poetry of war, leading brave men into certain death, and bringing some of them back. In Sparta's military machine, the Polemarch was more than a high-ranking officer. He was the engine of war. While the dual kings held supreme authority, it was the Polemarch who made the army move. Chosen from among the most experienced Lochagos or noble warrior families, the Polemarch commanded an entire wing of the Spartan army. Often numbering in the thousands, he planned troop movements, led strategic deployments, and implemented orders in the heat of battle with terrifying precision. The Polemarch's role was as much political as it was martial. He acted as liaison to allied city-states, managing delicate coalitions and coordinating joint attacks with brutal efficiency. He could initiate flanking maneuvers, direct siege tactics, and enforce unquestionable discipline among sub-commanders. While kings led with divine right, the Polemarch led with earned fear. His commands shaped battles. His decisions drew the line between victory and annihilation. To become a Polemarch was the highest military honor a Spartan could achieve without royal blood. But it came with a cost. A successful Polemarch was immortalized in Spartan memory, his name whispered by warriors and etched in stone. But one who failed. There was no ceremony, no honor, only silence or exile. In a society where courage was currency, the Polemarch was expected to spend it all, wisely, swiftly, and without hesitation. Because in Sparta, hesitation meant death, and the Polemarch never hesitated. In most Greek city-states, the Strategos was a common title, a general elected or appointed to lead armies, plan battles, and negotiate diplomacy. But in Sparta, where tradition and hierarchy were carved in stone, the title Strategos was rare and sacred. Sparta already had its kings, Polemarchs, and councils. So, when someone was named Strategos, it meant one thing: extraordinary circumstances. A Strategos in Sparta held authority that rivaled even the dual kings, not in bloodline, but in pure battlefield command. He was often brought in when a campaign required surgical precision, delicate alliances, or complex maneuvers beyond the scope of tradition. While sometimes the role was granted to trusted allies or wise elder statesmen, when a Spartan citizen was appointed Strategos, it was a mark of supreme confidence. He controlled logistics, military intelligence, troop movement, and even foreign negotiations. But he also carried the weight of possible failure, and in Sparta, failure was not forgiven lightly. The Strategos did not fight in the front line like a Lochagos. He watched, predicted, and decided. He saw the battlefield like a game of divine chess, each unit, each move, a thread in Sparta's fate. Sparta used this title rarely, but when it did, the fate of entire wars hung on the Strategos' judgment. In the machine of Spartan warfare, the Strategos wasn't the sword, he was the mind behind it. The Gerousia was more than a council. It was the soul of Sparta, carved in flesh and bone. Composed of 28 Spartan men over the age of 60, alongside the two reigning kings, the Gerousia represented the final ascent in a Spartan's military political life. These were not ordinary elders. They were warriors who had survived decades of war, sacrifice, and iron discipline. Each had earned his seat not by lineage, but through lifelong service to Sparta's ideals. The Gerousia held immense power. They judged capital crimes, including treason and betrayal. They advised the kings, often deciding whether Sparta would march to war or hold the line. And in some cases they even vetoed proposals from the public assembly, appella, becoming the final voice in matters of life and death. They did not fight on the battlefield, but they shape the fate of every battle. Their words carried more weight than swords because they were born of experience, not theory. To become a member of the Gerousia was to attain living immortality. Your decisions echoed beyond your lifetime. Within those stone halls, the true legacy of Sparta was preserved, in the memories, scars, and wisdom of its oldest sons. A Gerousiast did not lead troops. He led kings, and in the quiet of the council chamber, with torches casting shadows on marble walls, the future of Sparta was decided not by youth and fury, but by age and judgment. In a society built on strength, the Gerousia proved that the sharpest weapons were minds that had already survived the fire. In a world where most ancient kingdoms centralized power in one ruler, Sparta stood apart. It was governed by not one but two kings, a system known as diarchy. This dual kingship wasn't accidental. It was strategic balance forged from centuries of war and necessity. One king remained in Sparta to oversee domestic affairs, managing religious rites, festivals, and governance. The other marched to war, leading the Spartan army in person. Together, they represented both shield and spear, ritual and wrath. But Spartan kings were not absolute monarchs. They were born of royal lineage, yet their power was restrained. The Gerousia, the council of elders, advised them, and the Ephors, 5 annually elected overseers, could veto their decisions, put them on trial, or even exile them. Still, the weight of Sparta's survival rested on their shoulders. Their authority wasn't defined by words or crowns, but by actions, especially on the battlefield. Victory brought glory to the city and honor to their house, but defeat could mean disgrace or even death. Visually, they were striking. Crimson cloaks flowed over gilded bronze armor, and their helmets bore the symbols of old bloodlines. They marched with the elite, fought in the front, and dined last. In them, Sparta found both tradition and force. To be king in Sparta wasn't privilege, it was burden. And in that burden lay the strength of a city that never bent the knee. The Ephors were not soldiers. They didn't march in the phalanx or wear bronze armor, but they were, without question, the most powerful figures in Sparta. Elected annually, 5 Ephors served as the watchdogs of the Spartan state, overseeing kings, generals, and citizens alike. Unlike monarchs born into power, Ephors earned their position through reputation, wisdom, and the will of the people. Their authority was vast. They could declare war, negotiate peace, exile a king, or veto any military decision, even one made on the battlefield. One Ephor always accompanied the army, not to fight, but to ensure the law was followed and Sparta's values upheld. If a king faltered in courage or defied the constitution, it was the Ephor who held him accountable. They presided over trials, oversaw education, and maintained the balance between the military machine and civic life. In a society built for war, Ephors were the guardians of restraint, the steady hand behind the sword. But make no mistake, defying an Ephor meant defying the state itself. Their gaze was everywhere, their voice final. And though they never bled on the battlefield, their power shaped every victory and every execution. The Ephors were Sparta's invisible shield, silent, steady, and absolute. Not warriors, but law embodied. In the chain of command, they stood not within it, but above it. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into global military powers.